All right. So welcome to the Node.js Technical Steering Committee meeting, 8th December 2021. To start with, are there any announcements?
We onboarded a new collaborator, Tierney Siren, who has been involved in the project forever, just has never needed or wanted to be a collaborator before. So now he is.
Okay. Any other announcements? If not, we follow the standard agenda in issue number 1136 in TSC report. To start with, the first one is remove tenable support 40773. It's a PR from Ronak. I don't see a TSC agenda label.
There we go. I think that was discussed last meeting. That we were okay with bypassing the normal deprecation style and just deprecating as proposed in that PR. So I'm actually one that removed the TSC agenda just yesterday or the day before yesterday. So I don't actually think there's anything left to discuss there.
Oh, okay. So basically, the time when the calendar was issued, this had the agenda label. That's how it came into this. Okay, got it.
I wasn't there on the last meeting, but from what I understood, there were no objections to the PR. So
that's my understanding as well.
Okay, cool. So this is no more a TSC business. Moving on to the next one, which is clarification around real-world risk and use cases of VM modules 40718. Anybody knows what is this about and where is the topic for TSC to discuss? I think Matteo added the label.
I think Matteo added the label.
Yeah.
I don't think it's particularly time urgent. Oh, go ahead. You were going to say something, Robert?
No. I saw that you were also involved in that PR.
Right. Yeah, I don't think it's particularly time urgent, and I think we should probably wait unless somebody else has something they want to say about it. I think we should probably wait until at least Matteo is here.
Okay.
Which might mean waiting until January, which I think is fine. I don't think people should read it, get familiar with it, weigh in on it if they have opinions, but I don't think we need to come to any resolution on it anytime, in the next several days.
All right, so we defer it to a future meeting. Next one is rename default branch from master domain 33864. I know it's a long-running business that Michael initiated and several people participated. And I don't believe it's completed yet.
Who's hearing that at the moment? Is it Miles?
Michael has been the champion for that, but it's not a single-phased activity because we have tons of repos in the organization. Based on who is familiar with each repo, they have been championing the migration activities. As far as I know, the two repos that are critical and pending for migration are the core repo itself and the build repo. I may be wrong though.
I think you're right, but I think we just leave this on until it gets done.
Yeah. And the next one is migration of core modules to primordials 30697. So I was absent in the last TSC, but as I understand, the next action on this is to agree on a set of voting options within the purview of TSC and then go for voting. But then the options itself was not etched on stone. People such as Ruben had concerns or opinions on what should be the right set of options, etc. So I requested Ruben to discuss that in the previous TSC and then move on. I don't think we should go back to the wider collaborator base for discussion on this at this point of time, because the state at which we are is to zero down on set of options within the TSC purview and go for voting. That was my understanding.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know last time, but last time I was here, we had like a list of 3 options that was proposed, but then I think the consensus was that those options were too ambiguous and we need to have more explicit, concrete options.
Right. Yeah.
And then I don't know what's happening there after that.
Ruben, did you have anything you wanted to inject into this conversation?
So, and there, I don't know when about the TSC meeting when the 3 options were suggested, but last week we've spoken about the possible goals and the possible approaches. So in this case, we would have like multiple iterations of voting, because like, first of all, we would have to maybe know like what goals are actually there, and with which approach is it actually also possible to reach that goal, in fact. And that makes the voting process more difficult. So I suggested to have very clear suggestions like that already outline both of these things. And I asked all the TSC members to mention their opinion about what options would be good or not. But the feedback so far has been very little to none.
Okay, so looping back to the problem statement, when this came originally to the TSC was unable to take a call because the subject of primordials was not very well known to all the members of the TSC so as to converge to a specific option. So that's when we started a SME discussion involving people from the project who has specific opinions on this, and then we came back to the TSC with 1, 2, 3 discrete options which addresses specific goals and things like that. So now that's where I was concerned. Are we circling back again within the TSC and looking for options where TSC is looking for the SMEs to give them 2 or 3 options to pick choose?
I'd be interested if Antoine has anything to say, because I think you were involved in these conversations as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I have opinions, but I don't know if I think I already stated everything I had to say. So I could try to write my thoughts more clearly in the option if that helps people. But yeah, I don't have much to contribute to the conversation.
So one of the options, I mean, if you want to make sure the options in front of TSC are more comprehensive or much more wider in scope than what is presented right now in issue number 1104, then one of the approach is bring the SMEs, I mean, whoever has better knowledge on primordials, and speak to the TSC. I believe we have tried that options as well. So no, I mean, whoever in the TSC have the understanding about the pros and cons of various options, go ahead and vote, or we deliberate on the options and see options itself are foolproof and the most comprehensive. I'm not sure what is the path that we should take now.
So it seems like we had 3 options. Ruben doesn't believe that that's the three options, at least as they were presented, would be the best way to make this decision. And Ruben proposed an alternative, but I don't know how concrete the alternative is. Like, I don't know if it's first we'll vote on these 7 things as goals, and then we'll vote on the or anything like that. But I wonder if I hate to suggest this kind of meta, but I don't really know how else to approach this. I wonder if it makes sense for the TSC to make a decision about okay, we have these 3 options, or we have the more complete and comprehensive, less ambiguous, hopefully, path that Ruben is proposing, and choose between those. And I see that Ruben has his hand up, so I will stop talking and let him speak.
So my suggestions were very concrete, and I had hoped that it would lower the ambiguity in general, and that people would be fine with that. But I understood that, like, at the moment I have a list of, let's see, 9 different points on that I could think of, and I'm not certain if we have to limit it below that. And if anyone believes one of these options is bad, or if it's good, let's just say this is a good option or not. Like, I'm not, like, I totally agree. I don't want to circle around this all week, or like each week again. Maybe just let's go through the options. Like, let's do it right now. I don't know, to find a point, to see, okay, is this actually something that we want to vote upon or not?
I agree more with Ruben's approach.
So after listening to all the SME talks for, I don't know how many hours we spent, one of the conviction I got is there is no single option which is foolproof or the best option. Every option has trade-off. The question is, which trade-off work better for us? For example, if you're looking for robustness, you compromise on performance. You look for performance, you compromise on something else. So if we have that conviction across the board, then I think list out all the options and see if we can prioritize that, or which options are most reasonable to take, and then to put it for voting, rather than bringing all the combinations. All the combinations, the only challenge is that many TSC members, I mean, the voting options can completely get distributed, and it can bring out inconclusive results. That's my only worry.
Like my problem, for example, if you look at that issue, the 4 suggested, there's 4 alternatives there. One is tamper-free the entire process. I don't see how that's feasible. Then we have tamper-free just module loading. That maybe could be a good trade-off compromise. Selectively based on performance. Again, I don't think that's practically doable, because it takes so much time and effort to check these performance things. It's like last time we had a huge regression on HTTP, and I don't know how many hours Matteo spent on chasing those down. So I don't see that be a viable option. And then we have something else. So as the way I see it, we're voting between tamper-free module loading and something else.
Is this something else do nothing?
No, there is something else other than tamper-free.
Okay, go ahead, Ruben, unless your hand was never lowered.
Now I put it up again. And so that's also my, thank you very much for these words, because I also have that problem, like, what is even something else? Like, this is very ambiguous. Like, I have no idea what something else might be. And if we just go through these options, like, why is it, like, we can define the list of things that we want right now, what we want to vote upon, what options we believe might be a way to go. Is there anything standing in our way to just look at that right now?
Not the way. No, I'm happy to go through your list quickly now and see if any of those options, like if there are options that nobody thinks are viable, then we just remove those from the list. And then we focus on the things that people do find interesting. So if we,
I mean, if there's willingness to do that now, I mean, this issue has been, so much work has gone into it, and there's been so much, time spent on it, that if we're willing to like dive in and make progress now, I would be totally fine with that. I don't know how Girish would feel.
Yeah, I'm good with that also, but just thinking, do we have all the stakeholders, whoever took part in the discussion from the TSC are there on this? Michael is not there, but
I think like Ruben and Antoine are the primary stakes on either side of the issue, is my feeling. So correct me if I'm wrong.
In the TSC, because there are people outside the TSC also.
Yeah, in the TSC.
Yeah, no, let's scope it within the TSC only. Yeah.
So
okay, I think go ahead, Ruben. Let's see how it goes.
If someone wants to screen share, I think that might be helpful, but go on, whoever was going to talk next.
I would just read them out, otherwise it would take a moment. So first of all, let's first come to the TSC members. So there were, besides people being in this call, involved was Matteo and Michael, I believe. So, and those two are not here now, but—
I'm sorry, you mean Targos or MH Dawson?
Targos.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Otherwise I second the opinion that probably Antoine and me are like both on the strongest edges, so to speak, of the discussion. Someone else was there as well. I forgot.
It's Bradley, which is BMEC on GitHub.
Yeah, but like from the TSC.
Oh, Girish.
Yeah, of course, Girish and someone else.
Nikita was there in the initial part of the discussion.
Meetings, not all of them.
I think it was Joey.
All right, but let's go through the list. So first of all, we have the possibility to fully migrate module loaders and policy code to primordials and undo everything else. Code used from other modules would not be tamper-proof. So in this case, we would have the question, what is module loaders in this case and policy code? We would have to probably define this more closely, as Antoine did in the main issue, and to check all the dependencies from module loaders. And while that dependency list might not be really necessary to maintain the loaders, like maybe there are a couple of APIs pulled in for, I don't know, some things that are not absolutely necessary for module loaders to work. And so we might have to check that list again and probably attach it to that option. That would be my first option. The second one would be fully migrate module loaders and policy code to the C++ layer and undo all primordials. That way, there is no ambiguity in what code has to be migrated or not, because all code would be just C++, and that is not tamper-proof. That is tamper-proof, so that would probably work. Third option would be migrate all modules to primordials. This is probably one of these options that is not feasible, but yeah, maybe I'm wrong. Fourth option would be.
Ruben, I think it would be good to discuss them, because otherwise we just have to go back again.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, so like the module loaders, I think those are both 1 and 2. I feel are viable options, given that the people that work on the module loaders are interested in putting down that effort.
Yeah,
So I guess
that was the point I was going to raise also. I think both options are not very interesting for the TSC to vote on, because moving to the C++ layer or using primodules, I mean, it depends who is putting the work into it. And I'm not sure we as TSC care what technological choice we end up implementing. Maybe instead we should decide, do we want module loaders to be tamper-proof? And whoever puts the work, they make tests that ensure that, and that's it. Go ahead, Rich.
All right.
Sorry, you got exactly where I was going, which is that maybe we don't worry about the implementation, but decide which of these options are, if options 1 and 2 both do the same thing, but the implementation details are different. At least we can agree that those options as a bundle are acceptable or not. And I don't know, Richard, were you going to say something?
No, sorry.
So we merged the 1 and 2 into one we call tamper-proof module loaders. Is that fair, Ruben?
So I personally believe it is possible to also outline in our documentation about where to write on what code in what part. And we could argue that module loaders would have to be written in C++, at least in the future, without telling anyone else that you don't have to rewrite this, of course, from at the moment, but we could tell, if you want to work on it, you would have to probably port some code to C++. That would be one option. So that's why I still believe it as a viable option. But I believe it's also good to add another option that was brought up to make it tamper-proof. While having tamper-proof modules, what would be really important for me in this case is to have a complete list of parts that we would have to port in this case.
Yeah, on that subject, I think rather than a list, we should have tests. We should agree on which tests should pass. And I think that's, to me, would be the clearer path forward.
I believe that's a possibility. So, and that's something that I would argue might be something as a to-do for next time, but we could still go through if we are fine with other options.
Yep. No, but I guess these two are relevant options then. Should we continue?
Go ahead, Tobias. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ruben. Go ahead, Tobias.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rich. I believe one problem with the first 2 points that we've come across in the past is that the module loader and the policy code depend on other parts of core. And sure, we can determine those more or less statically, the way JavaScript allows it at least. But then every time we change code anywhere, even if it's not in policy or in the module loader, we have to check if it's a dependency of the module loader and have to check, do we need to use primodules? Then when we change the module loading or the policy implementation, we'll have to recheck all the dependencies that we introduce. And then conversely, when you look at code, for example, I fixed a bug in the policy loader that was affected by a dependency in the crypto module, because the crypto module used a default that would then affect the policy module, or the policy implementation, I should say. And now if you look at the crypto code, it might not be clear why the crypto code is using primordials, and the truth is because it is used by the policy implementation. So there's a lot of back and forth dependencies in there, and it might be difficult to justify those if it's not clear to everyone that it is a dependency of the policy implementation.
And one.
Yeah, just I second that, and that's why I think test is a better choice than just a list, because test will tell us if something is affected or not.
Well, but tests can only tell us if we test every single thing that can be modified by users, right? We'd have to not only test the APIs for any affection by monkey patching that are used directly, but also all the other APIs that might be used indirectly.
But isn't it also an option to try to reduce the dependencies?
Sure, we can absolutely document and do that. Yeah, we can have a very strict list of things that these modules can use. Then again, we might as well migrate them to maybe C++ if we don't want to use JavaScript anymore. So
yeah, I mean, I guess that's up to the person that does it. You know, is it easier to just do it to C++, or does it make sense to reduce the dependency somehow? Whoever actually does it, I guess we should leave that up to them to find the best way.
yeah, I'm not saying I'm against these options. It's just one point that we should consider.
Yeah, no, but that makes sense.
Thank you very much for the point. So if I understood that correct, we need a list again of modules that should not be used, not like in the not be used by the modules, by the module loaders, because that list, yeah, we could actually test for these modules not being included during the loading part. That would be a possibility out of my perspective. Like writing all the tests individually, I agree with Tobias that this is not only a very tedious job, but it would also be very difficult to achieve it for the future. Like if there is a change, we would not be able to test it. We probably cannot think of all possibilities how to monkey patch things or to manipulate it. So we do.
I'm not sure about that, because I've written codes that do that, that tries to, change all the the built-ins methods, and just injected it into the common /index.js file, and it was giving me the list of all the non-pro modules that were affected. So maybe it is possible.
Sorry to interrupt. I don't think we should dig into these too much. I think we all agree that they are viable options to further look into. Should we continue down the list?
That's fair.
Yeah. All right. Then this, well, first on two, and two, we already discussed it, right? So I'm going to go to the third option.
Yep.
Migrate all modules to primordials.
I don't think that's a viable one, unless someone disagrees. So we can strike that one, right?
Yeah, I mean, we can always revisit the idea of moving everything to primordials if something significant changes in the future. But given the state of things now, I think there's no appetite to move everything to primordials.
Okay, so let's scratch that part.
I just want to add to that point that there are a few people who believe that primordials or any technology that has the same effect is vital to a proper security model for Node.js. And that technically doesn't have to cover all code, but if it covers, let's say, 50% of all Node modules, then it's going to be really difficult to draw lines depending on dependencies between modules. So depending on Bradley's idea, for example, of a security model, we might end up going somewhere close to all code in theory.
Yeah, I think that's something in the future, though. I don't think that's anything the TSC would want to say we should do. I don't think the TSC is going to gather the will to say to do it now.
And you're right, it's probably not what we want to do. It just might end up becoming close to a reality.
So if I understood correct, you say the policy code, if we use that, it would actually reach out to all other code in our code base.
It's more about extending, for example, if we were to implement file system permissions, then we'd have to make sure that all our file system APIs are correct and cannot be tampered with. If we try to implement restrictions on fetch or URIs or anything, we'd have to make sure that that part of core is tamper-proof. Yeah, so it's more about a more complicated security model than policy alone.
I see. Okay.
Real quick, I didn't capture any of that last part for the minutes. If they need to be in there, somebody else needs to put them in there because it's already left my brain. Go on. I stopped at option 3 is not viable.
Yeah. Option 4, migrate all Node.js code to C++.
We don't have the contributor expertise for that, I think.
I don't think it's an option either.
No.
I think if there's a way that you want to discourage new contributions to Node, that will be it.
Yeah.
We should just get rid of all modules and use Node add-on API instead for all modules.
Undo all primordials.
I feel there are people that want that. I'm a little unsure if that's a politically viable choice. And that's usually the topics that people don't want to comment on.
There is no disagreement that people might want this, so I'm going to continue with number 6. If there is no disagreement, to keep it.
Wait. Number 5, which is undo all primordials. I mean,
It's an option.
yeah. I mean, if there's someone willing to advocate for that, sure. But maybe you are, Ruben. I don't know. Yeah, my sense is that's kind of off the table, at least in the short and medium term. But okay, yeah, let's leave it on. Okay, let's go on to option 6.
Just in general, I believe all of these options are not about medium or long term. Pretty much, it's like our perspective on how we want to continue with it in general for the future.
Okay. I mean, okay. Yeah, I would think that policy being tamper-proof is pretty important, but okay, let's not get into the weeds. Yeah, let's leave it on. Go ahead.
6, ask the community in a similar fashion as we did with unhandled rejections. To just give a short reminder, in this case, we send out a couple of options out to the community, asking what they personally would like as a behavior for Node.js in specific situations.
I think there's been plenty of conversation about this, and I think that I think as the TSC, we really need to actually like occasionally make decisions that aren't crowdsourced, and this might be one of those cases, but maybe that's just my opinion.
I think the problem we're trying to tackle is that we don't really have a small set of understandable options. So I don't see how you could ask the wider community to make a choice when it's not clear what the choices are. At least in the unhandled rejections cases, it was reasonably explained as to what the choices people were given. So the voting could be done. Whereas I don't think we were even at that state where you could pose a question with like ABC answers to ask the wider community to vote on. I could be wrong, but that's from my perspective of where this conversation is currently stuck at, is that if we had those options, we could probably make a TSC vote. We could also ask the community, but the point is that we can't make that vote right now because we're still discussing the options.
Go ahead, Tobias.
I agree, Richard, and I believe that primordials are a very technical way of looking at this. It's not really, primordials aren't the problem. They are trying to address a problem. And if we just ask Twitter if they want Node to be tamper-proof, they'll just say yes, probably. If the only alternative is not being tamper-proof, and primordials are just one way of implementing that. We're kind of discussing the implementation details, and I agree, I don't think we'll get a useful vote on it.
Robert.
Yeah, I mean, this goes, and I don't really have a sense here on the priority of things. Like this is about robustness, developer experience versus performance. We have these 3 aspects of it, right? That primordials affect. And, how do we weigh those? That also is relevant to which option we chose. Like if the developer experience is the absolute most important, then I don't think primordials. But if robustness also is, weighted against that, then, so I think we have those 3 things that we are trying to weigh and make a decision based on that, right? And that's where our disagreement come a little bit, because we we feel these things are in different importance.
Are you in disagreement with the community crowdsourcing option?
So
I'm just saying maybe the community can help us with weighing those three things. But yeah, as the other things, the other people said, I think primordials are very technical, so it's difficult to ask a direct question about primordials. But I guess it is possible to ask a question on a more general sense, indirect sense. What do you feel we should be focusing on? But we have that in that technical priorities list that Michael worked on.
Yeah, primordial questions may be a little difficult for the community to answer, whereas the trade-off in terms of general developer experience versus performance versus security, that's something which the community can come up with in a conclusive manner. So, and we can do that always. We don't need to fit it in this exercise. We can do this as an immediate activity within the purview of the TSC, and then later we can always go to the community.
So I understood that we want to probably not use 6 at the moment, and we add a new one instead that says something like ask the community about their perspective on tamper-proofness, performance, and maintainability of Node, things like that. Tobias, you have your hand up.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe you just said it in a different way, which might be more clear. So developer experience, as it was phrased previously, really is just about the experience for Node developers working on Node core, right? Primordials don't really affect the developer experience, at least not in a negative way, as we probably intend to mean here.
Maybe we should call it.
Yeah, sorry. So as Ruben said, maybe the maintainability might be worse for Node core developers, but the developer experience for others might be better because it's tamper-proof. Or who knows, it might be worse because you can't monkey patch things. So yeah,
maybe
just want to clarify.
One way to formulate is contributor experience.
I'm going to try to I'm going to send out the new options later on. Please comment in case I did not get it right.
Here are the options as I've been writing them, just FYI, in the minutes. I have nothing to say. I'm just screen sharing so people can see.
Okay, I'm going to continue.
Excellent.
Number 7 was move the REPL code execution into a child process to keep the REPL from working, even if the runtime itself would crash due to manipulation from the executed REPL code. To give you another perspective on this, so I try to find mentions where people struggled with manipulating the code that they would have an actual issue, and I could pretty much only find issues that were about the REPL code where people did that. And at the moment, if someone would manipulate, for example, let's say delete an array prototype for each, and then and probably Node.js core would crash and the REPL would close. We could overcome that and improve the REPL design a little bit by recovering from that in a specific state, but it would forget all the former input from the user. So it's not an ideal state either, but the REPL as it is written in JavaScript at the moment with Node.js, it's difficult to get it 100% right.
Antoine?
Yeah, sorry, finding the mute button. I don't think this option should be part of the vote because I don't think it has anything to do with the. I mean, everyone would like to have something like that, stronger rapport. But just I don't think we have a implementation ready for that. So who's going to put the work for it? and it doesn't really address the issue at hand. I think it's a different problem. There you go.
So why, just to give you another, again, why I put it on the list was because people mainly reported it about REPL code and not about a code that was run in their actual application. Especially because most code would probably crash in that case anyway. But we can remove it. Like I heard, like no, like does someone want to keep it on the list?
I think we can remove it and remove it from this list, but obviously, you know, we can leave it as something that someone can implement if they think it's valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, as an independent issue,
Yeah,
that can be tracked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, makes sense.
All right. So in that case, number 8 would also be scratched because it is about doing 1 or 2 in addition to the REPL code. No opinions against it as far as I know. All right, let's continue with number 9. Do not port any further code to primordials, but do not explicitly remove existing primordials either.
Basically, status quo.
Yes.
I don't think that's a good idea. I mean, well, I guess the question is not if I think it's a good idea. The question is whether it's viable as something someone might want, and I guess it is. Although I would argue that is a major abdication of decision-making responsibility.
Yeah, it's like a troll option a bit.
The worst of all worlds.
Yeah.
Is it 9 we're talking about?
Yes, do not port any further code to primordials, but do not remove existing primordials either. If I
Well,
understood
that's where we are now, right? Until we've made
right.
it. That's
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be left on, but I would have questions for anybody who would choose it. So I don't know if it makes more sense to remove it or leave it.
Option 10 could be report the vote to another time.
You can write a note beside 9. If you vote this, which wants to talk with you?
I will meet you behind the Waffle House.
I don't know if it's worth adding a new option, but an idea that. Sorry.
No, I wanted to check first that Ruben had gone through all of it. Oh yeah, he said he had 9 options. That's right. Go ahead, Antoine. We're all good. Sorry.
Okay. Another option could be to try to use there's a proposal bind this TC39 proposal, which is on stage 1, so it's very early. So I don't know if it's worth adding an option for the vote, but we could decide to use this proposal today, which doesn't really address the problem, but helps the readability of modules. And we could decide that in our build chain, we pass our JavaScript code through this proposal, so it's more readable. Pasting the link to the chat.
I believe we discussed that before, and it does not address the situation that it is, for example, still a performance issue, and it would only partially improve the readability and therefore the maintainability of the code. So I personally believe it's not really an option. That was, at least if I remember correct, the discussion so far about it.
Yeah. I mean, if we add it to the list, it doesn't mean we're gonna end up doing it. So.
Yeah, I mean, the question is not whether it's a good idea, but whether it's not whether it's the best idea, but whether it's viable, right? So I don't know the answer to that. That's for you. That's for Antoine and Ruben to figure out. But.
I don't think there's a right answer. Also, I think, it's a complicated topic.
We can make the assumption that if we go in a primordial way and this proposal is available, then that is what going primordial means long term. So I'm not sure whether it's, it makes sense to add it as an option, but it could be a valid note on the primordial way that this is how we would see it long term in terms of developer or maintainability.
Sure,
Yeah.
but there was also an issue of readability of the current code. So if we decide to embrace this proposal early, before V8 actually implements it, at least it does address this issue in a non-perfect way, as Ruben said.
I'm just checking on the time. We just got 10 minutes in which Rich has a private topic also to discuss. So probably, I think within this 10, the idea is to deliberate and look at what are the options that should be published for voting. Is that how we look at it? Or
I think if Ruben is willing, I think maybe the next step is for Ruben to, with the feedback from this meeting about what options can be rejected out of hand and what options need to stay on the list, Ruben can push that list into a comment or an email to the TSC, and we can go from there.
Yeah.
Just one question: does anyone have any other ideas or option that could be feasible to add on this list? Otherwise, I think that's a great step forward. So I guess that's what we're doing then.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for taking the time here. I would like, before we continue, I would like to discuss once, not maybe now, but in general, again, the if it's actually possible to reach specific goals with one, two, or with specific things in general, to have a general discussion about that in the TSC, so that everyone has the same view of reachability of specific goals, and then vote on it. But I'm going to send out the list in an email or in a comment with updated possibilities. There are 2 new options and a couple of removed ones, so it's definitely a lot less options than before. I hope that makes it clear.
Yeah, and if you want to include a sentence or two saying that next step TSC needs to decide on prioritization of robustness versus maintainer experience versus performance and vote, that might help, that people, remind people that they don't necessarily need to dig into all the particulars of these options if they have an opinion about the general prioritization of those things. Although as someone pointed out, we also have that in the technical priorities doc, so that might also be a link worth throwing in there as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you, Ruben. Thank you, Antoine. Thank you, Robert and Girish and everybody else who made this happen.
Yeah.
Because I know this has been a long, frustrating conversation for a lot of people.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks everybody for helping to move it on. It has been more than, I don't know how many months. Yeah. All right. Anything else on primordials before we move on? No.
We do have 6 minutes left. I would actually propose that we just end the meeting, and not. I did a quick glance over the remaining items. It's about TSC calendars, TSC meeting times, which is important, but we can discuss that in the issue or an email. The security triaging stuff, which I'll just say is moving along fine, and moving a repository, which these are all things that need discussing, but we're running out of time, and we do have some private business. So unless any of those are burning issues for anybody here today, I would propose that we just end the public session at this point. Any objections? Anybody want to second that?
Makes sense to me.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and do
That's
that
fine.
then. Thank you.